Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, February the 18th, and this is Open Mic. It is baseball season. Spring training underway down in Lakeland, Florida, and that is how we want to begin today's show. The Tigers really made three significant, newsworthy events happen here in the last couple of weeks, and they're all tied into the starting rotation. First is the 3-year, $115 million deal with left-hander Framber Valdez. Secondly, the $32 million awarded to Tarek Skubal through arbitration. And then third, which has everybody buzzing, is the fact that they've signed Justin Verlander to a 1-year, $13 million deal. JV comes home, and the Tigers are now top 10 overall in payroll. It's been a long time since that's happened, but all signs obviously point to the Tigers' overall philosophy, and that is to win now. So with the news that right-handed starter Reese Olson's going to be lost for the season with shoulder surgery, that's really what makes the Verlander acquisition that much more meaningful. They obviously have Troy Melton also and Drew Anderson. So, how they mix and match that starting rotation, depending on health, all that stuff will get its, sort out itself. But you're basically looking at a starting rotation that features Tarek Skubal, Framber Valdez, Jack Flaherty, Casey Mize, and Justin Verlander. Again, the order that notwithstanding, obviously Tarek Skubal is your ace. And we're going to get into all that. Our first two guests tonight, student athletes from Ann Arbor Pioneer High School, Mayor Malcoun, Andrew Hollinshead, talking Tigers baseball. Fellas, welcome to the show.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are here. And obviously there's we could spend the whole hour talking, and we might talking Tigers baseball. But let me first just get your reaction when the fact that, Justin Verlander turns 43 on Friday, but he still obviously feels like he still has something in the tank. We'll start with you, Andrew. Like, what was your initial reaction when you found out the Tigers signed him?
Yeah, well, when I first got the notification on my phone, there were kind of two reactions. One was the emotional side of it, seeing that JV is home, that Verlander is going to be wearing number 35 in the Old English D. And the second was a baseball aspect and a baseball strategy where with the news of Olson and the pitching struggles that kind of hurt us in the playoffs last year, I think that this is definitely a win now move by the Tigers.
Mayor?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Andrew on the side of the emotional side of things. Growing up, going to Comerica, you go to see JV, you go to see him throw a shutout. So it definitely is a little nostalgic to see Verlander back in Detroit.
Yeah, people were texting me, it's like, like whatever emojis that were just like all like exclamation points and everything. They're like, "What do you think? What do you think?"
I mean, when you think of Verlander in Detroit, you think of Detroit Tigers, Verlander.
Yeah.
Holly, you were mentioning 43 years old on Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is young. Let's be honest here. 40s is young, but not for professional athletes. But
right.
He's indicated he'd like to pitch until he's 45, which would be 3 more seasons in the majors likely. How much do you think? Like, how important is it? Do you think it is for him to reach that 300 win plateau? 34 wins shy of it going into this season.
I think that definitely has a special place for him. But I don't think that he's going to be he's obviously going to chase it, but I don't think that's the top of his mind this year. I think that this year he really wants to help the Tigers win a World Series because that's one of the things that he regrets from his time with us before. And on opening day 2023, Verlander had 244 wins. And since then, for 3 years, he's only gotten 22 more wins. So if he goes on that pace, like you said, he's going to have to stay around for maybe 2 to 3 more years, which would put him around 45, 46. And it's definitely up there on his top priorities.
Yeah. Again, individual accomplishments are what they are. I don't think, JV or anybody, you don't set out necessarily to reach numbers, but then once they're within reach, like 266 career wins as of today. And now it's almost like an unthought of accomplishment, reaching 300 career wins just because, like that used to be, almost an automatic ticket to Cooperstown. So there's 24 guys that have done it, that have gotten 300 wins. The only guy who's not in the hall is Roger Clemens, but that's due to a different set of circumstances. But just the way modern day starters are used now, they're averaging, like an entire inning less than they used to. So, he could realistically, like in our lifetimes, and you guys are a little bit younger than me, if he were to get to 300, he might be the last guy that we see, ever. So I think you do probably want to hang on. And I guess a lot will be determined by if he's able to stay healthy. And let's say you pick up 10, 12 wins this year, now all of a sudden you're, a lot closer in reach.
I was obviously real excited with the signing when I first saw it, but I feel like what everyone's glassing over a little bit was his 4-11 record last year with I think it was 3.85 ERA. Not great, JV.
Yeah, again, is it the Verlander of 2 decades ago, or is it the Verlander of 43-year-old body? So
Right.
Yeah.
it remains to be seen. Obviously, everybody's gonna be excited to see what it looks like, and obviously, the first time he steps out there, on the hill at Comerica Park, the place is gonna go nuts. There's no question. Obviously, the ace of this team, and the Valdez signing is huge for this team. Now you've got two legitimate ace lefties, but Scooble's going to be the ace always and forever, hopefully always and forever. But how do you think that'll impact like having a guy like Verlander in the clubhouse with Scooble and Valdez and company?
Well, so I think that having a veteran like JV in the clubhouse is the biggest impact. I don't think Scott Harris wanted to pay him for the player he used to be, but for more so the fact that he can mentor the guys. I think that's what's most valuable about this signing, where guys like Melton, Job, even though he's still injured, those guys can learn how JV does his things, how he recovers, how he studies films, how he attacks hitters. I think that that's the most important part of this signing is how Verlander can teach those younger guys, even guys like Scooble, how he does his everyday work.
Yeah, 100%. This signing was much more having a veteran leader in the clubhouse than stats. It's what it appears to me, and I think that's what Detroit needs. They need a guy who, like JV, who's been in the league for years, can really mentor the young guys and help them figure things out.
Yeah, I think that stuff's important, man. And I've been working in baseball for, I guess, 20 some odd years now. And, when you talk about, oh, it's a good clubhouse or he's a good clubhouse guy, a lot of times, fans that you don't quite fully understand or grasp, what that is. But to your point, Holly, when you say like, when a guy can see, it's a tribute to the work that JV's put in to keep his body and his mind and everything else sharp in order to be pitching into his early 40s, approaching mid 40s. But when guys can see that, like the Jackson Jobs or the Troy Meltons or Scoobs or anybody, it's like what it takes in order to play this game at an elite level for this many years. Verlander's presence, again, obviously his body of work as he's done as a player, but it's almost like, hey, how have you done this, right? Like, show me the ways of how you've been able to get your body and your mind right in order to have a long career, in Major League Baseball. I think that stuff's super important. And look, if you look at this team as a whole, and we're just focusing on the starting rotation right now, but chemistry, like you guys have been involved in team sports, chemistry on a team is huge. And when you have somebody like Verlander that says like has immense pride in putting on the old English D, if it means something to him, and obviously it means something to, Tarek is totally Detroit, but like that means something when it's not just like, hey, this is my boss, I've got to go to work. It's, hey, I'm representing the city of Detroit. And once that starts to spread throughout a clubhouse, like, that can work wonders.
100%.
All right. What do you guys think about as far as, it used to be like, oh, hey, we got a great starting rotation. Same with last year. And then you say, if they can just hit a little bit. How do you guys feel about the strength of this team with being able to, it's not necessarily a roster that's flooded with, a ton of power, although there is the threat of power up and down the lineup. But how do you feel like this team, weighs out from an offensive standpoint if they want to go win a division title and then get, have a deep run into the postseason?
I've always liked the offensive side for the Tigers. I've always thought that, they showed it last year before the All-Star break, how dominant we were offensively. And then after that All-Star break, it was kind of just all a landslide from there. But I think that now, like you said, we're the 10th highest payroll team. I think that this shows that we're going to make no more changes offensively, and that if we need to, it's going to be more so a trade deadline thing. But I've always trusted our offense. I don't think we need to make any moves. If anything, maybe McGonigal comes up. But I like where the offense is at right now.
Yeah, I think the offense, not necessarily the biggest question mark coming in, but we have this. We have the starting five. The offense is gonna be the thing that makes or breaks for us. And I feel like, especially last year, maybe later in the year, we were really boom or bust. Like some games we'd score 7+ runs or whatever, and others three or nothing. So that's what I think going on offense.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned like Kevin McGonigal, he's still only 21 years old. And if, he's at big league camp, if he does, make his way up, he's going to hit his way up. So,
Right.
they're not gifting anything. It's not as if, you're weak or vulnerable at a position where it's like, hey, we've got to get to, dig deep into our prospects and force the issue. It's almost like, hey, if you're performing well, then you'll get an opportunity to come up and contribute. I agree. Like I think there is, just in sports generally speaking, sometimes it's like, well, who's available, who's out there, and then you start, like weighing out numbers, like like the Alec Bregman deal, and then you started to match it with like what Zach McKinstry's numbers were, and if you project that out over an entire season, and he was platooning, like at a variety of positions, and he was an all-star. So you kind of sometimes we value players in other cities just based on like, well, this person might be available, but that takes away from the development within your own system, your own program. I like I really do. I like this Tigers team, and I think they do have depth at a lot of positions, infield, outfield, and obviously the starting pitching. To your point, if your starting pitching can keep you in it, right, and that's what they're going to have. And you meant like with Job and Melton, and we're not sure like Drew Anderson, like what their roles are going to be. Casey Mize, we haven't even really talked about. Jack Flaherty, like they have some guys, and if you're able to get the health is the biggest part, but if your starters and our bullpen, which has been a strength for a number of years, if they're keeping you in games, you don't necessarily have to lead the league in home runs in order to be a viable World Series contender.
100%.
Is there another team in the Central that maybe you look at their offseason, or maybe with what they did at the tail end of last year? Obviously, Cleveland's always going to be there, like Kansas City, Minnesota. Is there another team? And I'm not trying to disparage the White Sox because they're still on the come up right now. They do have some pieces, but is there any team in the Central that you're worried about with respect to being in contention for a division title?
Not really, no. I think that the only team I'm afraid of for the Tigers is the Tigers. I think they're their greatest enemy. That like you said, the injuries, the offensive struggles, where teams like the Twins, the Sox are kind of more in the down end looking to rebuild, and then the Royals and Guardians are always kind of going to be in contention, but I still don't think they have enough star power or just enough overall good players to compete with the Tigers. But yeah, I think the Tigers are their own worst enemy in the Central, like they were last year.
It really is ours to lose. Even the Guardians, who, like you said, Johnny, are always hanging around in there. I don't think they have the star power in their rotation or in their starting nine to compete with us. So it really is ours to lose.
It's like a fine line of, you don't want to be braggadocious or be like, hey, it's ours to lose, because you always want to have like some type of measured optimism. But realistically, like if you're going to spend the money and you're going to bring in, you're going to acquire people like Valdez and Verlander and you've got the two-time reigning Cy Young. It's like we should be taught, the appetite should be, hey, this is our year to do it.
Right.
And probably on paper, this is the best chance for this team to do it. It's wild. I mean, like, it's a cool feeling because, it's not always there, like it's not always there. I mean, you're not always in contention. There's some teams go on a run and then you say, man, maybe we're overperforming and what a heck of a run. There are going to be expectations placed on this team. And obviously because of what they did last year, obviously they labored toward the end of the season last year, but, last year is last year. But there's enough of a target on Detroit's back, I think, this season. That to me will be interesting to see, how these guys respond with being the expected favorites in the Central and being, I would assume one of the favorites to emerge in the American League as the representative, like to win the pennant. So that changes things. Sometimes when you're playing with house money and nobody expects you to do much, you can go out and play free. How will the added expectations, you think that'll affect it all? Like, having the added expectations, because it is still a pretty young, a young team.
You could almost compare this to Michigan basketball this year, where they have the guys, they have everyone, and they just got to go on a run. I mean, especially with being projected high in the preseason rankings or whatever. You really just got to go above the expectations, not think about it, and just play your game. So I think the Tigers, if they just forget about it all, expectations, they're going to be just all right.
Yeah, I think that with the money that they've spent and the expectations placed on them, I think a guy like Verlander, his signing can mentor and kind of help the guys through the struggles. But the fact that this team has made the postseason the last 2 years and have kind of got experience and know what the postseason feels like and what that pressure feels like, I think that that prepared them for kind of this season where we can try and go in all this season.
Johnny, do you think that they're kind of all in this year and this is the slot to do it, or they miss it?
No, I think look the window to compete, especially in Major League Baseball, when the window is open, even if it's open a crack, you've got to wedge yourself in there. And
Right.
look, I loved the team last year. I was in love with the team 2 years ago just because of what they were able to do to get back in the postseason and the
Right.
gritty Tigs and all that. I mean, it was like an identity with which they played. But it's tough to advance in the postseason. Like, you need a lot of things to go your way. It really is. 162 is a lot. And then
Yeah.
you got to get to the postseason. It's a whole different animal, So you handle the wild card, the division series. It's like, well, you got to take steps to get there. I think this team has proven it's not just a splash. It wasn't just like a one-off where you said, hey, man, they made a good run and then it's over. The kind of the elephant in the room is the fact that there could potentially be, a work stoppage in 2027. That bums everybody out for sure. Anybody associated with baseball, whether you work in baseball, play baseball, or watch baseball. So really, like, the window is right now because there is no guarantee beyond this season when the CBA expires. So I credit the Tigers, for what they've done and the moves they've made to get us to this point, because now it's like, it's all or nothing now, because we don't know what the future looks like, if there's going to be a salary cap, all that other stuff. That's all to be decided. We'll jump on here and we'll do that story another day. But I think if you're looking at it, it really is like it's a 1-year season. It's like who's going to emerge this year before the new CBA agreement.
Mayor Johnny, do you think that this team is good enough to beat, because obviously that whole talk right there is about the Dodgers. Do you think that this team could potentially beat them in 7 games in a World Series?
Yeah, look, those are the things where I always say, even from like a managerial standpoint, where, like when Leland was here and Verlander and Scherzer, and you had some of those seasons where it's like, man, could they have won one? Yeah, they could have. But when it gets to the World Series, all bets are off. When it gets to the postseason, all bets are off. The way this team is structured, as currently structured, yeah, I think so. If you look on paper at the starting rotation, yeah, I think so. Again, the chemistry component to it is, and I won't say it's not like the Dodgers just have this, a mix of like all these great players and they're not a true team. I won't say that at all.
I know what you're saying, though. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, because we're so intimately, we know these guys where it's like you root for these guys individually. This is a really, really, really solid team, and that can carry you. So do they have enough on paper to contend with a team like the Dodgers? Yeah, I absolutely think so. Does that mean it's going to happen? Obviously that's the beauty of baseball. You just don't know. But it's not like everybody's just chasing LA and who's going to finish second. I don't think that at all. But that's the beauty of this game. So do you think 90 wins in the regular season? Is that crazy talk, or is that, hey, let's get there?
I think that's more than doable. Just if everyone stays healthy.
Yeah, 100%.
Love
I think
it.
90s right in the book.
I love it. Well, we'll find out soon enough. Obviously, spring training underway, and then we'll start seeing some spring training ball. And and the good Lord willing, this team's able to stay healthy. No team goes through an entire season without losing, a key contributor or two. So, if they can get out of the gate, I think that'll be important. That's what we saw last year. I mean, you get out of the gate, you get out to a run, just ask the '84 team. If you can get out there and play with health, play great baseball, and have everybody else chase you, it changes the dynamic of the season. So I'm looking forward to 2026 Tigers baseball. I know that. All right, boys. Appreciate having you on. We'll do this again. I enjoyed it thoroughly. That's Mayor Malcoun, Andrew Hollinshead from Ann Arbor Pioneer High School, talking Tigers baseball. When we come back, we're going to pivot to the WNBA. You're listening to Open Mic here on WJR.